Problem 3-37A, we're going to complete the worksheet and then we're going to journalize the adjustments. So Greevy Theater Production Company's partially completed worksheet as of the end of December is here. Now we really don't need this window because we've got the same information down here. Click the icon to view the adjustment data. So we have some adjustment data. I'll close that for a second. Complete the worksheet. Use the letters A through E to label the 5 adjustments. The only thing we need to know really is that this equip stands for equipment. So right here, this is accumulated depreciation on the equipment. So let's get started. And of course, as always, the data, the balances from the unadjusted trial balance comes from the ledger, which is not shown here. So they put this data in here, these balances in here for us from the ledger. So adjustment A, as of December 31st, Greevy had performed $500 of service revenue, but has not yet billed customers. So because we've not yet billed customers at the end of the period, we need to show how much they owe us. And which account shows how much customers owe us? AR. AR is an asset and it's increasing, so that's going to be the debit. So $500 debit, letter A. And why do they owe us some money? Because we have performed a service. So we need to increase revenue. How does revenue increase? Revenue increases with a credit. So I'm going to scroll down here to find the revenue. I better use this. So here's revenue. And make sure you put it in the correct column. This is a credit column. So I'm going to put 500, letter A. So I've got a debit and I've got a credit. Now let's do transaction B. At the end of the month, Greevy had $700 of office supplies remaining. So what this means, let's go up to office supplies, is our accounting records show that we have $1,900, but our new office supply amount, when we send the intern to go count our office supplies, the intern comes back and says we have $700. So that's our new balance, $700. So if our previous balance was $1,900 and we now only have $700, how much did we use? The difference, $1,900 minus $700 is $1,200. So I need to lower this account. It's an asset. How do I lower an asset? With a credit. So I'm going to put $1,200, letter B. So that's the office supply account lowering. And then what's the other account that shows that we've used office supplies? Supply expense. That's an expense increasing, so that's going to be a debit. So I'm going to copy and paste the 1,200, put it here, letter B. Let's see what else we got. Prepaid insurance of $3,900 remained. In other words, that's how much we should have on our account balances. Let's see what the prepaid insurance account says. So it says we have $4,550. But when we go and do some calculations, we find out that we only have $3,900. So I'm going to place the $3,900 here. That means the difference has expired. So if we take $4,550 minus $3,900, how much do we get? $650. $650, adjustment C. So now why am I putting it on the credit side? Well, we had $4,550. Now we only have $3,900. So I need to lower this account. And prepaid insurance is an asset. How do I lower an asset? With a credit. Then I need to find the account, the expense that shows that we've used up insurance. And that's way down here, $650. Letter C. Next, we have depreciation expense of $4,000. So this expense, depreciation expense, is increasing. How does an expense increase? It increases with a debit. So I'm going to find depreciation expense, put in $4,000, letter D. And then whenever we record depreciation, we have to record accumulated depreciation. I'll leave this here. Well, let me get that out of your way. completely. So a $4,000 debit. So I'm going to copy and paste that. Now I need to find accumulated depreciation and put it as a credit. So why am I crediting that? Because accumulated depreciation is a contra asset. How do contra assets increase? On the credit side. And remember, accumulated depreciation only accumulates and only gets higher. So then our last transaction, our last adjustment, is accrued salaries expense of $200 that hasn't been paid yet. So salaries expense is increasing. So what's happening is at the end of the year, we've calculated that we owe our employees $200, but it's not payday. So we will pay them next year. And because we're not paying them, we owe them that amount. So we need to find salaries payable. So salaries payable is increasing by $200. Transaction E, adjustment E. So now double check, do you have A, B, C, D, E? And make sure that each one has a debit and a credit. So that looks good. So now I'm going to add up the debits. So 500 plus 4,000, 1,200, 200, 650. That gives us 6,550. Add up all of our credits. And we get the same thing, 6,550. Now the next thing we need to do is update our adjusted trial balance. So let me get that window out. And I'm using this window to block out everything else so I don't put it in the wrong line. So we had $4,300 cash. We did not adjust it, so it's still $4,300. AR was $5,900 debit. We debited it some more, so we now have $6,400 of AR. We had office supplies of $1,900. We lowered it by $1,200. That gives us that $700. We also got that $700 from right here. Prepaid insurance was $4,550. We lowered it $650. That gives us $3,900. We also got that $3,900 from here. The equipment was not adjusted. Accumulated depreciation, we had $7,600. We increased it by $4,000, so that gives us $11,600. So now, like I said in the previous problem, the most common mistake on a problem like this is students and your instructor putting these balances in the wrong column. It's very easy to do, especially when you get towards the bottom of the worksheet. So AP was not adjusted. It's still $3,600 credit. Salaries, we had nothing. Salaries payable. We increased it by $200, so our new balance is $200. Capital did not get adjusted. Withdrawals did not get adjusted. Now notice withdrawals is a debit. Put it on the debit side. Service revenue, we had $77,000 credit. We increased it with another credit, $500, so we get $77,500 of revenue. Depreciation expense, we had none. We increased it with a debit, so our $4,000 goes as a debit. Supplies expense, we had none. $1,200 debit, so that is also a debit. Utilities expense, no adjustment, that's a debit. Salaries expense, $27,500 debit plus another debit of $200 gives us what? $27,700. And then finally we had nothing for insurance expense. We increased it $650, so the balance is $650. Now, we add up all of our debits. Well, first of all, let me make sure that all my assets have a debit balance. My contra asset has a credit balance. The two payables have a credit balance. Capital has a credit balance. Draws a debit. Revenues a credit, and expenses are always debit balances. So everything looks good. I add up the debits, and we get $114,850. Add up the credits, and we get the same thing. I hope. Woohoo! Alright, So now that we're done with the worksheet, remember this is a worksheet, and in the real world they just do it in Excel because it makes it much easier. We're going to journalize the adjusting entry. So remember, these adjustments have not been entered into the official records, they have not been entered into the official accounting records, because the official accounting records are the journal. So we need to enter these in the journal. We're going to start with transaction A, or adjustment A. We got $500 debit of office supplies. And no, that's not office supplies. That's accounts receivable. So AR is going up. And the credit is service revenue. Service revenue. Now, if you don't like to scroll up, you can click here and it pops up the solution for you. Now, however, on the test, they're not going to include this link to the solution, so you will have to scroll up here. So our explanation is to accrue service revenue. Next one, at the end of the month, Greavy had $700 of office supplies. So we are doing transaction B. So let me find the debit. So supplies expense, $1,200 debit. Supply expense. And the other one must be office supplies going down. There's office supplies. And I got the office supplies debit from, or credit from right here. To record office supplies used. So remember, on this office supply adjustment, they gave us the ending amount. So this amount here, they gave us the ending amount, and we had to calculate the amount used, which was $1,200. Now I will use this one so I don't have to scroll up so much. Prepaid insurance, $3,900. So this is transaction C. So we're looking for C. C, we had $650 for insurance expense as a debit. Insurance expense. Where are you? There we go. And then the $650 credit is prepaid insurance going down. Just so you can see that, here's a prepaid insurance going down. So we have a debit and a credit to record insurance expense. It's not to accrue. Accrue would mean something's accumulated but not yet been paid. We've actually already paid for this insurance. So this is recording the insurance expense. Depreciation expense, $4,000. Hopefully you can do this one in your head and not have to look back. So in that one we increase the depreciation expense, and then you increase the accumulated depreciation to record depreciation on the equipment. So just so you can see what I'm talking about, depreciation expense is right here, $4,000, and then the credit is right here, $4,000. And then our last one, accrued salaries expense of $200. Well, we can plug in the $200 now. And adjustment E, we increase salaries expense, and then the credit is salaries payable. Salaries expense increases. Salaries payable increases, and accrued salaries expense, because the salaries have accrued but have not yet been paid. Cool, so that's how we do the worksheet. You do the worksheet, and then you take the adjustments when you're done and enter those into the journal. Now, after the journal, in the real world, if we were doing manual accounting, we would then have to go and post these debits and these credits to the ledger. But most companies use computer software, accounting software, and the accounting software always posts for you. Thank goodness, because that's the most tedious part, in my opinion. And that's the part that I made the most mistakes as a student. I did not like posting. Anyway, that's it.